Hello and welcome to 20 Good Summers, or welcome back to 20 Good Summers podcast. I am your host, Paulina Porskova, and this here on my right is my love and the most delightful person in the world, and the man who's done a lot of work on himself accidentally, my love.
Jeff Greenstein. I never know when you're going to stop with the preamble, so I'm not quite sure what to do.
And now I'm starting to enjoy it.
Yeah, you're savoring it. Change of venue, guys. Look.
Okay, so for those of you who cannot see us on YouTube, we are back home in our rented apartment in New York with a snoring dog behind us. I have just come from the gym, and so I have no I have no hair. No, Jeff has
I
no
have
hair.
no hair. You have.
I have a ponytail and no makeup,
Yeah.
and I'm wearing a very skimpy tank top.
You look great.
Well, thank you.
You look great.
Yes, and it's as informal as it could possibly be. And so here we are today, and it's a beautiful, beautiful day outside. And we have decided to take this day to talk about what else but baggage.
Right. We realized we've done 2 episodes about dating, but we kind of went up to the point where you meet the person. You meet the person. We got to the point we talked about doing the work, setting your priorities, maybe going on a dating app, concocting a better profile than I did. We did all that, and then we talked about the run-up, and then we stopped.
That's right. And we actually realized that we owe you guys, well, and ourselves, a couple of more parts of continuing with where does this dating thing in later on in life go? Like, how does it continue? Okay, so you have put yourself out there. You finally do get that date with the guy or the girl. And there you are across the table staring at each other and going, wow, could this be the one?
And as you said, you bring baggage to these meetings. It's one of the things that I think, once again, I love to come back to this theme, 20 Good Summers. When you meet later in life, when you are well tested, when you have had relationships, you've had families, you've had job experiences, you've had adventures, some good, some not so good, you come in with a set of prejudices and so forth that you bring to these meetings. So we want to talk a little bit about
Yeah, basically, you show up at that table in that spot where you have set your first date, and what's invisible but very much there are just bags and bags and bags, and they are not all Hermes and Gucci. Some of
that's
them are
right.
plastic garbage bags filled with
Yeah.
crap.
I'd like to start by talking about one of the very first things you asked me about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for those of you who may not know, we met on a dating app. We connected via text.
Dating apps work, you guys.
Dating apps work. That's
Give 'em a
right.
chance.
And I eventually said, because I was stuck in LA on a TV job, I asked P if she would like to brew up a pot of tea and get on FaceTime and have a conversation. And we kind of have decided that that was our first date.
Yeah, I think it was our first date because that is well, this is when we first saw each other, sure, on the screen. But this is also where I first posed one of the questions that I posed to everyone on the first date right away. As soon as I settled in, my question came out, and it was this: what went wrong in your last relationship? Or what went wrong in your marriage, or your longest, most serious commitment?
Now, before we get to my response to that and what it meant, we talked about the analogy of the job interview. Okay. And clearly you had arrived at this particular question as like the first question. This was like one of the first things you asked me.
That's right.
Why was that the first question that you wanted to ask a date?
Well, because I did realize that. See, this is funny because I spent all morning today going through our emails to the podcast, which, by the way, is so much fun
You guys are
hearing from you
amazing.
guys, and I'm trying to reply to everyone. And there was one email talking about this lady who said, if he's on the other side of the political spectrum, I want nothing to do with him. So, like, and I've just figured out that instead of sort of hedging and, seeing like if I can, when I should pull this out, I should be straightforward about it and say it right off the top of
Wow.
the bat.
Lead off with it.
Lead off with it because it's incredibly important to her. And I think, yes, absolutely. Whatever is super important to you, lead off with it because
Wow. Okay. Can I just interrogate that
go
for a
ahead.
minute? So the tough questions first, the things that are most important to you first. No, you don't drum roll them.
So, unlike when you're 20,
Yeah.
at 50 and 60, we don't have the fucking time. So, don't waste it. Like, yes, look, if you're 43 and you want a kid, you better ask this guy or girl that you're going on a date with if they're open to this idea. Because if they're not, bye bye. Nice meeting you.
Yeah, that's
Done.
not a good one to finesse in date
Yo,
3, 4, or 5.
none of these things are good to there are certain things that you can get around, right? But for me, so okay, good to go back to my big question. Jeff is gently removing my arms from the table so it doesn't shake the camera. Yeah, for all of you who can't see.
Right.
Um, so for me, I found out that, by plentiful dating, that men that, didn't know what went wrong in their
Oh,
previous relationships.
really?
Uh-huh. I can't tell you how many dates I went on where the guy went, "I don't really know, like, she like, it was all cool," and then she was like, "I'm done." And I thought,
Yeah.
"Whoa, talk about a man who has not done any work
I
and
don't think
had no idea."
I don't think a mature man should be, like, dumbstruck when asked that question. I mean, have an answer. I think a mature woman should have an answer.
Any
What went
mature
wrong?
person of
Yeah.
any sort really should have an answer, but the one that I came across far more frequently
Yes.
was, "Oh, I did everything I could, everything in my power, but my wife, she just had borderline personality disorder."
Right.
And
So
again,
I
I've said this before, I swear to you that this was 75% of the time I came across a man that would say this on the first date. When I asked what went wrong, he would let's blame it all on his
Hey, let
crazy
me ask,
wife.
were these people, these men that you were dating, were they clinicians? Were they diagnosticians? Were they
Oh,
all of them
professional therapist.
professionally
Sure,
trained?
of
Yes, of
course.
course they were. So they were no doubt ideally trained to diagnose
Of course they
borderline
were. And
personality disorder.
if they weren't properly trained to diagnose their ex-wives, their yoga teachers were, or maybe sometimes their pottery teachers that,
Right.
that turned around and said, she definitely has some sort of a disorder, man. Like you shouldn't be with her. Like I can't tell you how many times came across guys who, with a completely straight face, would go there. And so to me, that was like I learned, I learned by making a couple of mistakes, such as dating a few of those select lovely
Yeah,
gentlemen,
that'd be a mistake.
that when somebody calls their ex crazy, you're next.
Yeah, well, okay, couple of things. I think that saying, "Oh, she had borderline personality disorder," is the acceptable face of saying, "Bitches be crazy."
Totally.
Right?
It's completely that. It's a man who refuses to understand women, who's not interested in understanding a woman and what his part is in the breakup of the relationship. So, I learned due to some of these fellas that I dated, I learned that I absolutely was not interested in a man like this. And this is why one of the first questions I asked you was that, and Jeff came back with this reply.
I had a very I would love to say that I understand why I responded the way I did, but this is what I said. I said, "Well, if you were to ask my ex, she would say that she married a raging narcissist who sucked up all available light, so she was perpetually in shadow and could never blossom into the person she was supposed to become." And then P said to me, "And is that true?" And I said, "It's a little bit true." Now,
I can't tell you guys, this to me was catnip. I was like literally had found
how?
the first man in 3 years of looking and after 50 plus dates that took responsibility and also, put some of this on him. Yes, some of this was true. Yes, I did mess up. that to me, when you can take responsibility, that means that you have a self-awareness, which means that you can work on becoming better, on not doing it again, or at least knowing that this is something that you want to, do better with. And that to me, the willingness to at least learn because you know that you might have come up short in the past is the hottest thing ever.
I I'm genuinely stunned.
So, yeah, Jeff said, "Yeah, I do have this rather large bag of this rather large garbage bag
Yes,
that's
and
filled with styrofoam cups, but I am doing my best to
yeah,
recycle it."
I'm gonna open it and show it to
Yeah.
you. And this goes to a theme that I guess has recurred in our conversations about dating, which is don't put a shine on it. Like, actually be who you are. I could never have dreamed that being honest and forthright about my failings would be catnip to a
Mm.
woman like you. In retrospect, I still don't. This is actually in the monologue that I posted. I still don't entirely understand why I chose to lead with that. To lead with it, guys, with no backspin. I
Darling,
didn't
it's
say what?
well, sorry, I'm
Go
interrupting
ahead.
you, but it's because you're really smart. And you actually, as I said at the top of the program, that you accidentally did the work.
Yeah.
Unlike me, who intentionally did the work, but you did do the work and you were a smarter person when I met you than you had ever been in your life. And I think you, I mean, when it comes to you and I, you seem to sort of have almost like a second sense about how I feel or what I think. Like you're so tuned in. And I don't think that came from nowhere. And I also don't think you were always like that.
I
I
agree
think
with
your ex-wife did not get the benefit of this Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, I would thanks for saying that. I would like to believe that, I had learned some stuff. I didn't do the kind of steadfast, assiduous work that you had done, but I had learned from some painful experiences. So perhaps that's what went into that initial pronouncement. But it was definitely not putting it all on my ex, saying she was entirely responsible, bitches be crazy. It wasn't even trying to talk about it in a balanced way. Like, well, it takes two to build a relationship, it takes two to break. I didn't even do that.
Well,
I
that again that's an immediate excuse rather than, you know what? This is where I fucked up. And I so appreciate people who can look at themselves and say, you know what? This is where I fucked up.
is okay, is that do you believe that's specific to you? Or do you believe I'm gonna talk about
Well,
women for a minute.
I
Do
think
you
it's a really good
believe
question.
this is yeah, is that specific to you and the painful experiences you had had, or is that what a mature woman wants from a guy?
You know what? I would actually like to know from our
Yeah.
listeners in this because here I only have myself, to examine this way. And I have to say, when I was 19, when I met my husband, I didn't wanna I thought he was, Prince Charming. He was perfect. Whatever he said about his exes, whatever he told me, I accepted blindly. I supported it when he told me the reason he couldn't be a good father to the children he had had because it was the women's fault. I bought it. I bought everything he told me because I was a 19-year-old idiot. Uh the second time around, and this is before I met you, I went into it equally as blind. I fell for a man who had done nothing wrong in his relationship, but his wife was crazy. And again, I was like, commiserate. Oh, you poor thing. I can't. Oh, this is so sad. How hard this must have been for you. Then I met his ex-wife and discovered she was quite a wonderful person. And that that put me in a little bit of a tailspin. But, enough said about that. Again, except to say, that taught me a really, really, really big lesson. And after that, I was on the lookout for this red flag, which turned
Yeah.
out to be a red flag to me. And I found lots of them. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I found lots of men with these red flags. And as we said before, when you are in your midlife or in your third part of life and you're out on the market, it's because well, it can
You're
be
a broken toy of some
you're a
sort.
broken toy of some sort. It might not be because you're a broken toy, like somebody might have died
Yeah.
and it wasn't your fault, but you are broken in some ways. And then you have the years and years of experiences that you're bringing into this new relationship. Now, can I read this email
Yes.
that we got from, I believe, David?
Okay, yes. Thank you. That was perfect lead in. Do you want me to read it or are you going to read it?
You know, you're a guy and David is a guy. So,
Okay. All right. This is from our friend David. And listen, this is from our prodigious mailbag, guys. You guys have been so generous with your time writing to us. This is from David. I am going to maybe abridge a few syllables of your deathless prose, okay? He says, my girlfriend, 63, and I, widower, 64. Wow, how we unbelievably fell crazy in love after meeting 3 months ago. I mean, really, it's just something else. And man, it's good. Most podcast numerous dating coaches all over Facebook and Insta focus on the seeking and initial modes. That's the exciting stuff. I'm interested in the sustainability side. You guys are going on 3 years, actually just past 3 years, so definitely past the puppy love stage. When I used to meet a prospective romantic interest, besides obvious things, if it got any more serious, I want to learn what happened in the end in serious relationships. There can be a lot of red flags there, of course, often hearing only one side of the story, and it may just be mundane, such as fell out of love. Both of you had long relationships and shorter ones too. I'd like to hear more of the pathology of what went wrong. Lots of easy answers usually to that question, which is be crazy. And and beyond the obvious stuff that happens, such as infidelity that break relationships, how is it maintained from your perspective? How do you work to stay fresh for 20 plus good summers? Boy, this is the whole show here, David. Thanks. Both of you had long relationships, and from what I've read, they were not so great at the end. Even dating other folks. I understand with kids involved, another thing we're going to talk about in a minute, you shy away from that aspect of your lives, but if possible, would like you guys to delve into long term sustainability.
well, clearly both of us are really great at long-term sustainability. Ha, since here we are in our 60s in a new relationship. So sorry about that bit, David. I
Yes.
don't think we're exactly the right person to ask about long-term sustainability.
Except
Let's
for
talk
maybe.
about the part that we are familiar with, which is we did have very long, serious relationships, marriages in both of our cases, that that didn't work out, and we found ourselves out on the market with a couple of limbs missing and torn shirts. Um, and then we found each other on the toy shelf.
Right.
Um, and so Jeff actually did say what went wrong. But you've already stated what
Yeah.
you told me went wrong in your relationship, and he took it on himself. I mean, I think that is so lovely that you presented it from your ex-wife's point of view. So you know what? I'm going to try to do the same. I've never actually done this. This is an
Oh,
exercise. I'm going
okay.
to present this from my husband's point of view.
Yeah, let's hear it.
That's really hard.
I feel,
That's really hard.
I understand it's hard. Wow. Okay.
Oh gosh, this
Yeah,
is
what
like,
would his
oh my
narrative
god.
be about you?
Forgive me if I cry. I might. Um, I think he would say that, um, that he married a young woman who that he absolutely adored and that adored him. And it was just the two of us in the whole world. Nobody else kind of existed. Um, then our children came in and they sort of entered into this like sacred world of ours. So it was just like the four of us and no one else. And I think he would say, as I got older and things were harder, you weren't there for me. You didn't help me out. You didn't, instead of taking care of me as I needed you to, you became bored with me and started looking outwards. And when I was running out of energy, you, you were, you were my husband did say this a few times, that he sort of started blaming my age, our age difference, that I was still a young whippersnapper and I could go out there in the world and do whatever I wanted. Meanwhile, he was getting older and he didn't want to do all of this. Like the things that I wanted to do, he had already done. And so I think he felt like I abandoned him, and that I was looking for novelty elsewhere.
Wow. Why was that hard to talk about?
Because, because it's true in some ways, because it's actually true. Because I didn't know. I didn't know how he felt. He wouldn't he didn't talk to me about it. And so I couldn't be in on it. But it is true. I didn't know how he felt because he didn't tell me. And I tried really hard to get him to talk, to confide in me, but he had such an enormous store of pride,
Hmm.
and he wanted to be the prince. He didn't want to be a commoner.
So this goes a little bit to what we were talking about in our last episode, which is that it's hard for men to be vulnerable and to talk about feeling less than, feeling right. Do you think
Yeah.
that's part of it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, he didn't want he thought that if he would show himself as vulnerable, I would stop loving him. And I never stopped loving him, but the fact that he wouldn't show me his vulnerability turned me away because I thought he was no longer interested.
Mm,
It
gosh.
was such a like, gosh, if one could only talk honestly to each other without all of that um defense getting in the way, maybe things would have been different. I don't know.
It's really hard. Those patterns get set, you bring them into a relationship. There are strategies uh, that protect you, that armor you emotionally, and it's terribly difficult to let go of those things. I mean, that is what ideally counseling can help you do is take off some of that armor, but sometimes even that can't help. It's a very, very difficult thing, particularly for a couple who's been together for a long time and, as you said, are at different points on the arc in terms of the arc of their lives.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I remember going to my therapist. Well, I started therapy, I think, when I was around 40, because at first it was, I think it was, perimenopausal and sort of this thing that kept these hormones that kept shifting and kind of freaking me out. And, uh, and at first for years, the therapy had nothing to do with my husband. I would go in there and complain about my mother and my cousins and my this and that and work. And it wasn't for years until my husband started creeping into my sort of litany of things that are unsatisfactory in my life. For a long time, I thought, well, at least I have my husband. But I remember my therapist saying at some point, and this is, asked my husband to go to therapy. Of course, I feel like we all do that. Like most women do this, where at some point you go, oh, I think we're in trouble. Perhaps we should take this to therapy. And I had already been in therapy independently for a while. And and here's another thing about therapy. What that I just realized. And actually, and I think a therapist told me this, was that when one person starts going to therapy, it's not necessarily the best solution because they will start figuring things out. Then they start feeling smarter than their partner,
Mm.
and then the balance is off, and it's very difficult to correct that. But joint therapy, with each other, I think is a terrific idea. But my husband did agree to go, and then he went a couple of times, and then he sort of turned around and said, "You know what? This shit's not doing anything for me. So why don't you just go ahead and be therapized, and then let me know when you're good." Uh, not the
That
greatest
didn't
thing to
feel good, did it?
that did not feel very good, no.
Gosh, okay. You know what? If you don't mind,
Yes.
I'm gonna change the slide to a different slide. So okay, so that's I mean, what we've talked about so far in terms of baggage, the theme of our episode. We talked about previous relationships.
Mhm.
I mean, what P and I have in common is really we had one tremendously significant relationship in our lives, which shaped a lot of our feelings about relationships, a relationship that we grew up during.
Yes,
And
and it shaped who how we thought of ourselves and who we were. I mean, to such a huge extent that um, I remember when we met, Jeff and I, and about a year into our relationship, and this came as a revelation to me when I realized that I was the best me with him. That like the true revelation of love was that I got to be the best me with this person. And likewise, I think you get to be
absolutely.
the best you with me.
Yeah, I do believe that this has caused my best qualities to come into the light and has also enabled me to work on some of my worst. Um, but you know what? I do want to take part of David's email and kick it down the line a little bit because he was talking about sustainability.
Mm.
And I want to sort of shove that down the line a little bit because I want to ask about some other baggage related issues. So, when you would meet a guy, okay, so that
Mhm.
was question one. What went wrong in your previous relationship? Now,
And
I
a lot of them
remember
eliminated themselves right off
exactly.
the bat.
Check, please.
In fact, and I have to put this in,
Yes.
the last date I had with a man that said that, and he actually said, "Oh, my wife, I suspect had a borderline disorder." And we had just ordered cocktails and we had just ordered food. And I stood up from the table and I said, "Good luck finding a woman that's not crazy," and walked out of there.
Wow.
And I felt very proud of
You
myself.
should feel proud of yourself. I wonder if he ate your food. Okay. What else did you I remember some things from our interactions, which I can, gently salt in here. But what other things did you want to know about a guy on that first date?
Well, okay, another thing that was really important to me, and this is also, this comes with like the baggage idea attached, which is children. To me,
Yes.
it was imperative that my partner, girl or man, why am I saying girl, woman or man, would have children, would be a parent.
Oh, would already be a parent.
Yes.
Why is that?
To me, it seemed that my children, of course, are the priority in my life. And I think anybody who's a parent prioritizes their children. That your children are number one. And unless you have children, I don't think you can understand how important children are. So if you have children, you realize that your partner will always prioritize their kids and they will let you prioritize
Well,
your kids.
maybe. I mean,
Well,
I
this
would
is what I thought
yeah.
anyway.
Well, also, I think you would want to know, like, what's the state of your relationship with your children? Because I would imagine you might meet a guy or a guy might meet a girl or whatever that, where you're estranged from your children. They hate me. They don't want to talk to me. Or they're overly enmeshed. I mean, you would want to know something about would you want to
Well,
know?
because I wanted to meet somebody with children, it of course comes with the entanglements with the children. So if you have children, which I thought was a positive, it also comes with a negative that, well, they're probably parenting differently from you. And
Yeah.
therefore, their children might not behave the way your children do. Their children might be younger, or they might be older, or they might be too enmeshed, or they might be still living at home, or they might be taking their parents' money, or the ex-mother is, crazy, or she's turning the children against you and your new partner. I mean, there's such a treasure trove
Right.
of baggage when it comes to
Exactly.
children, and yet that was something that I wanted. I wanted it because when I met my husband, he had 4 children already, 2 only 2 of them that he told me about initially. The other
He
2 he was
2 sets of sons with 2 previous marriages.
Uh-huh. And after the initial shock, I, uh, I have to say that all of these, all of my stepsons, and their families are some of the most important people in my life. I feel like they were gifts. my step grandkids, which you are going to
Yeah,
become a step
I love it. I
grandpa
love
too.
it.
Um, I have we well, you were almost there. So 6 step grandkids. I mean, it just it adds a richness to my life that is, it has no um
Bounds.
thank you.
Okay. This is really interesting. Yeah. I mean, family was incredibly important to me. I grew up in a big, noisy family. I have 3 younger siblings whom I love. I had lots of cousins and aunts and great uncles. And by the time P met me, it was really down to my siblings and their kids.
Yeah.
Um, but family is incredibly important to me. And I really wanted a lot of kids. And I married a woman who didn't want a lot of kids. And so we compromised and we had one, which is something I think I always felt kind of bad about. So when I learned that I had met a woman with kids of her own and stepkids and step grandkids, and so I was very excited about a big unruly family because that's what I knew from childhood. So I was not, and may not be true of every guy, okay? But in my case, I was not just not resistant to this. I was eager to embrace this. And obviously you're always cautious, right, about introducing your kids to the new person in your life. But I would say we were supremely bless bless you?
No, well,
Fuck
whatever.
you. I think we were supremely uncautious about that. I met your younger son on our second date.
Yeah, but it also needs to be said that our children are grown men.
Yes.
So
True.
it's not like they're in their teens or even younger for that matter. Now, let me ask you, when you went out on your dates,
I'm glad you're bringing this up.
the women that you met that you dated, how was the situation with their children? And what kind of situations did you run in
I ran
to?
into a rainbow of situations, as one might expect. Now, remember, guys, I didn't date much before marriage, okay? And so when I was out on the dating market, this was in my 50s. And it turned out you can meet a lot of different family configurations at that point.
Mhm.
I met women with grown children like me, right? Like, roughly the same age, right? I did meet a couple of women who had teenagers, and specifically in 2 cases, one was a teenage son and one was a teenage daughter, and they were extremely protective. Extremely protective, which I do understand. I do understand being protective, but in one case, a woman would not admit to her daughter that she was dating.
Mm.
And part of this was born of a contentious relationship with an ex, but I do think it was almost like a self-limiting thing. And there was another woman that I dated who had a young son. And again, it was weirdly, I'm probably not rolling this out correctly, but I really came to feel in both of these dating situations, I can't really call them relationships, but in both of these dating situations, that what these women really wanted was a weekend boy,
Well, that, actually, we
which is fine, by the
both of us
way.
have a lot of girlfriends that would love to have just a weekend partner, and I know lots of men that would also likewise love to just have a weekend girlfriend, and I don't understand why those 2 are not getting together.
I don't understand why
Why
yeah, I
the
yeah.
because there seems to be such a wealth of people that only wants to have a weekend lover.
Yeah, this would, I mean, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but I'll just say that what happened a few times in circumstances like this is that I would meet a woman, I would really like her, we would go out 4, 5, 6 times, and then I would do a thing that my understanding is men don't do this, but I would say, "So, where do you think this is going?" I guess guys don't do that. I guess that's a girl move. I
Mhm.
guess guys merrily go about vacuuming up sex and attention until the girl says, "Where do you think this is going?" But the truth is, and I said this in a previous episode, I don't know what the right adjective is. Feminized. Let's go with that.
Really?
In that I wasn't just sleeping around. I was actually looking for a partner and I didn't want to waste my time
Mhm.
apropos of 20 Good Summers. I didn't want to waste a lot of time on someone who was just interested in having me as a weekend boy. And in one case, I got 6 months into something before I realized, oh, this is never going to advance. This is never going to go anywhere. There was a woman I went out with 3 or 4 times, and she was so phobic. Like, I had to pick her up several blocks away so that her 14-year-old daughter would not see a strange car pull up to the house. So, like, and I realized, "Oh, this is never going to advance." That
Mo
and that is fine. Again, it is super fine, but as P said, the women who want the weekend boy or are not ready for something serious should absolutely be coupling up with the guys who want a weekend girl and are not interested in something
That's
serious.
right.
I just wasn't one of them.
And that's probably something that you should have asked
I
right off
should
the
have.
bat.
Yet
But
another example of how you are smarter and more evolved than I am.
well, darling, I'm a woman.
Yeah, but I also think, listen, to be fair, okay, let me just take another page from my personal playbook. Okay. In the very, very early going, after the demise of my marriage, as I think I have said, um, I did have a longtime friend declare herself. That was kind of interesting. I did get fixed up
Mhm.
a couple of times and so forth. And I was very emotionally raw. And I found myself saying something that, I mean, it was, here's what I would say. I would feel like, you know what? I'm right out of a 25-year marriage. This is very new. I'm very raw. I absolutely enjoy your company, but I don't know how much weight I can carry. Right? I'm like a rusty bicycle.
I
That
think
was
that
right.
I think this is really fair, and I think I mean, obviously, I know about this story, and I think it's a great thing to say to somebody,
Okay, but
but
yes. But here's the problem. So my dear friend Quinn, I was out to lunch with my dear friend Quinn, and I told her about this. I said, I feel that when I say that, I sound like one of those assholes, like one of those asshole guys who just wants to sleep with the girl, but I'm not too, can't handle a heavy commitment, man. So don't like lay your heavy trip on me. And she said something which I found kind of amazing. She said, Jeff, that line is true for you, but that line has been ruined by assholes. It doesn't mean you shouldn't say it because it is true. And you should give women
yeah.
fair warning about how you are feeling, what your baggage is, okay? How much weight you can carry, what you are looking for, and what you don't think you're looking for.
Correct, and if those women have done their work and know what they want, and they're not interested in weekend boyfriends, then they know to walk away from you whether you're just saying it because 'cause you're an asshole or because you mean it. See, had you used that line on me,
Yeah, how would you have reacted?
I would have had sex with you, and then that would have been it. And I would have had gone and have sex with many other people as well, because obviously you are not somebody that I would invest in a relationship
Right,
with.
and I was not a good bet at that point.
Yeah, I mean, and if a
And
guy tells you, "I'm not a good bet," it it's not an invitation for you to try to change him. See, now when we are 20 and
right.
when we're 30, we think that this is an like, "Oh, but I'll be the special one. I am the one that's
That's
gonna
true.
get around this, and I'm going to show him that I am the right woman. He's gonna forget all." It actually, in fact, to some of us, unfortunately, like me, that is a challenge that I couldn't resist. "I don't really want you," meant, "Oh, just watch me try."
We're old enough now to know you don't do that.
You're an idiot if you do it. You're an idiot. You're
You're
wasting your time, and you're gonna be heartbroken, and, you're going to break some hearts, and it's entirely on you. This is entirely on you.
and you have to be, I
Believe what
learned
people tell you
exactly.
people tell you they are.
Maya Angelou rule, right? But I got into a situation again. It was very early, and I was very naive, where I said this and resaid it. But the woman that I was dating did not want to hear it. She was convinced that I would come around.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there were some early signals that I should have picked up on, which would have told me she was convinced I would come around, but I wasn't smart enough to pay attention to such things. So it ended
Mm.
badly.
Yep. Well,
It's
that
on me.
well, the part of you not picking up on it, that's on you, but then, I in my belief is that in every relationship that doesn't work out, and if it goes catastrophically wrong to where you both really kind of don't like each other, that's a 50-50 deal.
Yeah.
You both did some bad in there.
Right.
If you both can walk away, shake hands, and go, "Hey, that was fun. That was nice. Good luck. I can't wait to meet your, next wife or your next husband." Well, then no hearts were broken and no harm was done, and
That's the platonic ideal, right?
wonderful.
Yeah.
That has never really happened to me.
No, not me either. Okay, not since I was in my 20s. I wanna go back to the issue of kids, and then because we have a couple other things to cover. Okay, so how did you make the decision of when to introduce a potential partner to your children?
Well, my children, as I said, by the time I
Yeah.
was I was out actively dating, my children were full-grown men. They lived on their own. They had their own girlfriends, boyfriends. They were fine. So, I would introduce a partner if I thought the person had any potential. Once I did it by accident because
Mhm.
that guy happened to be at my house when my kid came over to pick something up, and so they met, and that guy then became convinced that, he was in a relationship with me, which he wasn't, and that backfired. So, so I can see those women that wanted to park 4 blocks away, just in case. Actually, and I also have girlfriends who were single mothers, for example. A lot of the times it's happened to single mothers where they do not want to have any, uh involvements in front of their children until their kid is, like, goes to college.
Right.
I personally, I don't understand how they do that or why they would deprive themselves, but that's the way that they wanted to do things, and I'm sure it worked, it works out for them. Like, for example, I am a child of a single mother, and my mother probably could have erred on the other side.
Yeah.
Because my mother is a spectacular woman, and she lived in Sweden, and she lived her life as a man, which of course meant I had, like, 3 different uncles every week. And that was cool. I mean, I would get, like, sometimes they would give me money and, tell me to, put in a good word about them to my mom,
Eh.
and I'd take the money and buy some candy, and
Did you put in a good word?
well, I mean, I would say, like, "Uncle Lars is nice," and mom would go, "Eh, whatever,"
Right, right.
and then it would end there. But, uh, I I seeing my mother have her own life on the side of being my mother, I don't think was particularly bad for me. Um, I think not feeling like a priority is not wonderful for children,
Different thing.
but that's a
Yeah.
different thing.
Okay, we're gonna talk more in a subsequent episode about the idea of blended families because that's a little bigger than we can handle in this. But this is really on the topic more of like talking about kids and family at the outset. I want to talk about something else.
Yes.
Ready? Financial.
Oh.
Ooh boy.
Oh, yes.
This has come up in a couple of the emails
Mhm.
we have gotten.
Mhm.
How in the world to roll this one out?
Yeah, this is
Uh,
this is a little tricky too.
It's very tricky. It's a very again, when you meet someone at this phase of life, uh, career is still something that a lot of men and women are very engaged with.
Yep.
Some
And
of them
possibly at the top of their respective career.
entirely possible that they're at the zenith
Mhm.
of accomplishment, or in some cases, I mean, this was the case with me, things are starting to tail off.
Or in the cases of a lot of women, they gave up careers for children and family. Then they either got booted by their husband or they called it quits. And here they are with no career and no money, kind of the situation I was in for a bit.
Yeah. So how do you broach how and how early do you talk about issues like career, finances, things like that? How do you do that?
Well, don't you think that, again, sort of like the one lady that wrote in about how important the political stance was for her, what is really important to you? For me, Um, I, uh, I, I had enough money to support myself, not in a lavish lifestyle to which I had become accustomed, but with absolutely no, no problems, very privileged. Um, and if a man that I met, had virtually no money, uh, I think I was and again, I was kind of okay with that if he was doing something like he was a high school teacher, and he was following a passion, he was doing something that was really worthwhile and sort of giving to the world, and if he didn't have money, well, then I would learn how to balance
Yeah,
our
well, so this is
situations.
interesting because this conflates two issues, which is an issue of identity, your attitude toward work and career, and then it also speaks to financial means, right?
The actual
And those
financial
things are not always aligned. And what I hear you saying is you want a guy who knows who he is and
Well, I
who's
needed a man that would not be intimidated by me, and you could take that in a financial way, like, obviously, a guy like, I went on a date with a billionaire. Yeah, he was not intimidated by the small amount of money I had. Um, but, so I think the 2 guys, it feels like more equal if they have more money than you.
it feels more equal that way.
I think so,
Mm.
or that they come to you in a position of power, and, or
That's a more comfortable position for a man to
more
be in.
as well, for an older man. I think
Mhm.
younger guys are maybe less dependent on this, but I think older
Yeah.
guys, yes. Um, or the men being in some way, like you said, it's a question of identity, sort of, associated with what he does, what he's really good at. If he was a really wonderful chef or, again, teacher, they're so underpaid and so valuable. Professor, doctor,
Right.
all of those to me, like, it doesn't to me, that wouldn't matter very much. The financials wouldn't
Wouldn't
matter
matter
very
very much.
much
Yeah.
because, it would place them in an equal, but what I'm talking about is equality, like, let's have the same amount of
Yeah.
baggage here, and it equalizes in different ways. So it doesn't just have to be, "I have 1,000,000 and you have $10."
Yeah.
There's other factors.
You know what's interesting? Two things occur to me. Okay, one is that I remember my shrink said to me once that, that your life sits on a stool that has three legs. There's love, work, and family. And isn't it interesting that what we've covered in the course of this, in terms of what you would want to elicit on these early dates, is you would want to know the person's attitude about love, family, and work,
Yep.
right? All of these things. You want to know about their sense of relationships, their relationship history, right? Their attitude toward family. Are they still actively parenting? In some cases, if you're a little younger, do you want more kids? How do you feel about being a step something, right? Are you open to that? Are you open to forging relationships? It was super important to you that that was something that I wouldn't just keep at arm's length, but actively embrace. And I have forged really strong relationships with not just your sons, but their partners and,
All your
oh my,
future
all of
step
my future
grandkids.
step people who I absolutely adore. I, I could go on. And then, of course, the issue of work. Now, as I said, we have both been through some very profound work transitions in
Indeed.
middle age.
Yep.
You found an entirely new career as a writer and via social media to return to Estee Lauder. That happened while we were together.
That's right.
Um, I was
6
kind of
years ago, I was just, that model from the '80s that nobody could really remember her name.
Yeah, and a lot of what followed came about, I'm restating historical fact, but came about as a result of your Instagram presence and what you did with it, okay? In my case, the television business went through some changes and so did I, in terms of the kinds of work that I wanted to do and how I'm where I wanted to do it. So, you kinda met me at a tipping point in terms of how there was a certain kind of creative axis that had served me in the past. I was a television writer and showrunner for 35 years. And as that began to close out, I started directing, so forth. All that stuff was starting to fade a bit. And
Well,
it,
you were also you started stepping away from it
yes,
because the nature of the jobs were changing, and you were too much of an art brat
I,
to
I am
to
absolutely.
resist.
Thank you for saying that. It is. I am an art brat. I am the product of an art school education. I never thought I would be commercially successful at anything, and so I still have this art brattiness that lays within me, and I just want to do work that is meaningful and exciting to me, and that was getting harder and harder to do. So I was looking for other and different creative outlets. Okay. You met me at a point where that was happening. And a lot of our discussions about
Mhm.
my work were about what that does to a man's sense of identity. Not a subject for this episode,
Yeah,
but
a man's ego, and
yeah.
but it's a really good subject because a lot of us in our 50s and 60s, if you're not at the top of your career that you've been working on for your whole life, but you're sort of at the "wait a minute, now what" part,
Yeah.
this is where we were when we met the "now what," and we're still sort of going through that. We're still doing the all right, well, now what? Now, we are so incredibly privileged that we actually have choices.
Yes.
We can we can decide what we want to do and where we want to do it. It's not like there's anybody waiting for anything from us necessarily.
Listen, like and subscribe, rate and review.
Yeah, that's right.
But,
And then
but yeah,
then we'll have something that we actually have to do.
Yeah, but this is something I think a lot of people who have, what's the best way to say this? I guess, still people who are creative in an environment that is very tricky right now in term for creative people, older creative people. It's tricky how to do stuff that is meaningful, how to provide, in some cases, as an older artist, mentorship, right? And help young people so far. Well, this is something we're still kind of trying to figure out. I do want to say one more thing, and I don't want to be incredibly specific because I don't think we're obliged to. But we did have an honest conversation about finances during our second date.
Did we?
Yes, we
Our
did.
second date? Oh, that's
Yes,
awesome.
we did.
I
We
think
had
I
it.
think I had learned my lesson at this
Well,
point.
this is what I want to kind of pinball off of briefly. We had an honest conversation, which was I don't think we owe it to our podcast audience to be overly specific about it, but I think
Mm.
we both came away satisfied from that conversation. Is that a fair thing to say?
That's a fair thing to
That's
say.
all we need to share with you guys. But how do you feel about when a woman takes herself to the marketplace to date? What kind of information does she need and should she elicit from a man she's getting to know about career and finances and so forth?
And savings for that matter,
Yeah.
right? What if he's doing exceedingly well right now as an entrepreneur, but there's nothing in the bank because he invested it all in his new business that he thinks is going to do really well. I think and I think that it all sort of boils down to, well, what is important to you,
Mm.
right?
You need
If
to make sure that your goals are in alignment.
Uh, well, no, it's not
Uh,
even that. It's not goals being in alignment. It's priorities. What can you not do without? And if it's money, well, then make that. Then let talk about that right from the beginning, right from the top. If for example you are a woman who or a man who would prefer to be taken care of, well, make that very obvious, like, right from the beginning, because there might
really?
be somebody
That's looking to
that
do
is
that.
looking for a mate just like you. There is I hate to say this, but there is a lid for every pot. There really is. I found so many lids, uh, that
Well,
were for other pots,
yes.
and there was nothing wrong with them, just, the wrong one for me.
Right.
And it made me realize, oh, but there are really truly viable options for other people.
Right. Uh, okay. We're coming up on the end of our hour, so I
Dear, that
just
went
wanna
quickly.
I just wanna round out this discussion of the baggage. The what we've described is really hard things to talk about. Like,
Yeah.
we have set some challenges before you guys. Like, it is hard to be honest about the failings of a prior relationship. It is hard to ask tough but important questions about what a potential partner wants in terms of family and their openness to embracing the family you have. And also, it's tough to have these conversations about work and finance right? But they're all critically important. So I throw it to you as someone who is pretty steadfast and stand up about these things. How in the world would you advise men and women? Well, how do you summon the courage to do that? How do you do it? Because these are hard questions to ask. Like, it's hard enough to sit across the table from a stranger. How do you do that? Is there a straight answer to that question? I'm making it, I sent you an impossible question.
Well, I mean, yeah, the thing is you're looking at me and you're asking me, and so, of course, Paulina, I just, you know, gather the testicles and say it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, what about this? Did you get a little bit of a tailwind from the knowledge that you can't waste your time on people who are unworthy?
well,
Maybe.
this is in part because I did waste my
Mm.
time. This I'm not talking about my husband, but in the time that I dated, I did waste my time on specifically one or a couple of people that were distinctly the wrong people, and and it's very hard for me to stop kicking myself for having made that mistake. And so that taught me the wonderful thing about it, of course, is that it taught me what I should be aware of, what I don't want, where I don't want to go, what is a problem. So I mean, my God, the lessons were provided for me by these men, and that's actually something I should be thanking them for. So thank you, guys, for that.
Thank you, unworthy partners,
Yes, thank you.
for teaching me.
Yes, thank you for breaking my heart and being terrible. Um, eh, but yeah, the outcome is that you learn. As long as you don't withdraw into a corner, bitter, moaning about how tough life is on you, but you actually take the lesson, then you advance. Then you keep advancing. So if you don't ask, if you're out on a date with somebody and you're having the most wonderful time and you don't want to wreck it by going, so by the way, how much money do you actually make? Because yeah, that's I mean, let's face it, that's not hot. It's not sexy. I mean, if a girl looked at you and said, "So, how much do you make?"
I mean, this kind of would happen. It's not hot. But on the other hand, it's hot because this is a woman who knows what she wants. And if you can answer that question, then you're a man who's got the strength of character and the confidence to
Okay, what would be a very unsexy question for you to get from a prospective date
oh,
that you really like? A woman that you think is
an
really
unsexy question.
like, so you're on a date with a woman that's really hot and always she's really smart, she's
I
attractive to
mean,
you. What can she ask you that will really put the alarm bells on?
what's Jennifer Aniston really like?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
I think,
that's not hot.
okay, we're just going to pinball off this too, because we just have a few minutes left and I want to get back to part of David's question to close out our hour. But an unhealthy obsession with their knowledge of your past. I mean, in our cases, sorry, I would say in your case, someone who wants to talk all about Sports Illustrated covers would be about as exciting for you as someone who wants to talk about the minutiae of the first season of Friends. I like my credits. I'm proud of them.
Mhm.
But if that's all someone wants to talk about, then they're dating an IMDb page and not me.
Yep. Well, see, this is something that happens to people that are slightly in the public eye or whatever part that we reside in. But, if you didn't have to, well, I guess we don't know what it's like if I was a school teacher, an unhealthy obsession with what my female students look like would be definitely off-putting.
Unhot. Yes.
But yeah, it's hard for us to like sort of
I
theorize.
would like to hear from our legions of devoted listeners. Okay. Let's talk about first date stuff. Okay. Where obviously dating is a theme that our listeners are eager to talk about,
Well,
judging
because
from the dozens and dozens of emails we've gotten. Yes.
well, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting,
Go
but
right
yes,
ahead.
gray dating or season dating. I wish we had like a, kind of a punchy
Hot
name.
old dating.
Hot older dating. Um, but yeah, this thing that would this second time around, sometimes third time around. It's different. It's different because it does have a clock ticking. And because with all that baggage that we pull to the front door of our prospective partners, some of that is really good stuff. I mean, some of it is, some of that baggage comes in really great bags and it's really worthy. All that wisdom and knowledge and
Yes.
sometimes children and family and other like big bonuses that you get with this new partner that you might have to get used to. So, what?
Oh, you seem to be rounding third base and heading for home. I was convinced
Darling, this is why I need
you were
you.
going to slide right into home. Okay.
Instead, I just totally forgot where I was.
I just want to, obviously, it's too big a topic to tackle in the minutes we have left. But one of the things he talks about, David does in his email, is he's 3 months in and we're 3 years in, and he's talking about sustainability. How do you sustain it? And we're going to obviously tackle this in a big way in a future episode, but I would like a pithy response
You know what?
from
You
you.
know what I'd like? I would
Yes.
like for you guys out there to write to us
Yes.
about
Good idea.
sustainability because you might be better at it than we are.
Yeah,
Quite
well,
frankly.
3 years in,
No,
guys,
I mean, we're 3 years in and we're still like blissfully
yeah,
like stupid. We're still waking up every morning and just kind of like, well, I don't want to get too graphic here, but let's just say that, we
you wake
are
up happy.
damn right.
Yeah.
And we go to sleep happy.
Yeah, and
And so it's like a little, a little gross, sorry. But sustainability, yeah, let us know. Let us know what sustainability, how to sustain a relationship from you, or for that matter, how not to.
exactly. I love that. That's a good topic to tee you guys up for another episode. I was just going to say this before we close out, is that something that came up, we were talking about this last night over dinner, as a matter of fact, is how much we enjoy playing. Like, I think, like, our relationship is very playful and silly and playtime-ish a lot of the time. This is dangerously Kim Cattrall territory, I just realized.
Yeah, you are about to control.
All right. So
And
they take
also,
this away
but
from me.
also,
Yes.
that is so worth it. It's that we should control a whole
A
episode
whole
about this.
episode.
We will probably
Yep.
annoy the shit out of you people.
Yeah.
I'm really, really sorry. But there might be one or two out there that have also found a playmate like later on in life. And and again, if you have anything to say about that, please write to us because it's really a great pleasure to get these emails and talk and we can talk about them and it makes us think and we can read it up on the podcast, which is all super fun. And now I shall say this is it for
Well,
this
you have to
episode.
tell them how to get in touch
Well,
with
no,
us.
this is where you
Oh,
come in
this is
handy.
where I
'Cause-
thought.
yes, exactly. Go ahead, Jeff. What?
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought you were going to stop the episode before we got to say we are at 20goodsummers.com. There is a contact page there that goes straight to our inbox. Or if it's easier for you to remember, 20 Good Summers, spell out the word 20, 20goodsummers at gmail.com goes to the same inbox, okay? We read every email. And in many cases, Paulina will respond to your
And
email.
PR team.
She is our,
That-
as
all right.
yes, we were asked to our
Technical
publicist.
team is
Technical
Jeffrey.
team, PR team.
PR team.
So please write to us. Keep this conversation going. Wow, this has been a really interesting hour about baggage.
And hopefully we will see and hear you next week.